Sweet.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past.
Good evening and welcome along to NUFC Matters. It is Wednesday night, which means it's the retro show night, and as always, we'll leave it up to the fans in the chat, or if you're sly and manage to get an inbox to us quickly before anybody else, we'll leave it to the fans to get the name of the team that they want to select. This week it's Newcastle versus Ipswich Town. Another one where I'm sure the lads will have probably struggled to find some classics, but they look at some games that they've either been to or memorable games between the two teams. I find some celebrities who support Ipswich, and the lads have got to guess who they are, and we also find some players who've played for both teams. But recollections aplenty will be coming tonight. First of all, I want to say happy birthday to someone who's been a regular contributor to the show, and that's Dodo Bird, who is 66 today. Happy birthday, Dodo Bird. He has been the source of some absolutely fantastic stories throughout the last 12 months for us. The best one being the story of the trip to Gray's nightclub, where he ended up absolutely mortal with Gibbo and ended up losing his trousers. So that's a great story from Dodo Bird. There's been many others, and there's also been obviously a lovely gift of a diary that he sent us, which he was involved to make the official club diary, the 83-84 book, which he posted a copy to me. He posted a copy over to Liam and to John Gibson and Malcolm as well. So thanks very much for that, mate. I hope you're having a cracking day as best you can under these circumstances. So happy birthday, Dodo Bird. Top man. And Steve, you've got a birthday as well?
Yeah, it's me nephew Cosmo's 12th birthday today. So happy birthday, Cosmo. Hope you had a good one. Poor kid, second birthday during lockdown. You know, it's amazing how things move on, isn't it? But I'm sure he's had a good birthday, and we'll be popping over with a card in the next week. You know.
Good stuff. And is it Stu Penman's birthday tomorrow, Mitch? Did you say?
It's tomorrow. Aye, that's why he's here in Dubai.
Wow! How old are you, Stu?
30.
What? Is there a problem with the line?
I thought you said how many pints have you had?
It's also Jed's birthday, Northerners Rock. It's his birthday tomorrow as well. So, mate, I can't believe you share a birthday with him. You know, commiserations to both of you.
Yeah,
I'll be 47 tomorrow.
Very good, mate. Well, I hope you have a good week, because I think you're there for a week, aren't you? Unless tonight will probably feel like a week by the time you two finish on the bloody Jaeger
I've only
bombs.
booked a week in the hospital when I get back anyway, so we're all right.
I bet you have. Okay, well, it's birthdays all round. Happy birthday to everybody, and let's crack on with the show. So, George, we'll come to you first with your first recollection of Newcastle versus Ipswich.
Right, thank you, Steve. Steve, I hope you forgive us. I'm going to start with a Harry story. That's my father, Neil's grandfather. And it's about Ipswich. He, during his RAF service, wherever he was posted, he always used to go to whatever football matches he could. I mean, when he was in South Wales, for example, if he got a 48-hour pass, he couldn't get home in 48 hours. So he just used to find a place to watch football and then go back to the base, and he did it all the way around. Well, he got seconded to Bury St Edmunds, which was a United States Air Force base. They had taken over some mosquitoes, which were going to be used in a special raid. You know, the mosquitoes that attacked the nuclear plant in Norway. 633 Squadron was the film, and I think that's what they call them. Well, my father worked on those mosquitoes with the Americans. He wasn't best keen because he wasn't a fan of the Americans. But when he got there, he quite liked it because they're far more relaxed than our RAF are. and they're not all polishing shoes and buttons all the time. And he found if he talked to the American that was in charge of his squad, he could get a weekend off to go and see a match and so on. Well, Bury St Edmunds, if you go 50 miles north here at Norwich, go 50 miles southeast, you're in Ipswich. So he always had a good pick for games. So this weekend, he decided he'd go and see Ipswich. And he knew a place on the it's the M11 now, but the A11 was the main road. And he knew where the lorries all stopped from past experience. So he went along and he found a wagon that was going the direction he wanted to. It was a hay wagon. It was covered with hay bales. And the guy didn't have room for him in the cab. So he said, well, you can get amongst the hay bales if you want to. But for God's sake, keep yourself hidden, because otherwise I'll lose my job, you see. And he just about to get in when this other bloke turned up and he wanted to go in the same direction. So they both scrambled amongst the hay bales and off they went towards Ipswich. And sure enough, after an hour or so, just over an hour or so, the wagon stopped and my father got out and made his way towards Ipswich, looking for a local bus sort of thing. He didn't get any response from the other bloke, so they just assumed he'd got off somewhere else or he had stayed on to go somewhere else. Anyway, he went to a match and he got back to the base. And on the Monday morning when he was reading the local paper, there was a story on the front page about a farmer unloading his hay bales, and they found a headless body in amongst the hay bales.
I wondered where you were going with this.
And what had happened is apparently the other guy had stuck his head above the hay just as they were going under a low bridge and lost his head. And it was on the front of the paper. And because my father denied all knowledge of anything to do with it. He didn't want to know anything about it, but he was quite sure that that's what had happened, that this bloke lost his head because he stuck his head above the hay bales on that wagon. So there's a different kind of Ipswich story for you.
That's brilliant. Right up my street. You probably get us into bother with people watching the channel saying I'm encouraging, topping people with knocking their heads off and sticking them in the ale bays.
Stick your head above the parapet, Steve.
That's what happens, aye. Okay, good start, Jojo. Something a bit different.
The real football story was a 20th of December '69, 4-0 win to Newcastle United. And I picked it because it was the one I was at, and it was a particularly good game. They played very well against an Ipswich side, which was quite a good side, but just couldn't live with it on that day. 4-0. Pop Robson scored 2 goals. Young Dyson scored a goal, and David Ford scored the 4th one. But the team was interested as well. McFall, Craig Clark, Tommy Gibb, Burton Moncur, Dyson Robson, Wyn Davis, Aaron Toft, and Ford. And they just simply played Ipswich off the park with a brand of football which we like to see at St James's Park. Ipswich had stars in their own without Mills and at the back. It probably would have been a lot more than 4. And they had one of the Dutch players that Bobby Robson brought in for them, Colin Villeneuve, and he was quite good. And of course, the other bit that was intriguing for me was that playing in midfield for them that day was Charlie Woods, our old player, forward. And Charlie was somebody I liked as a young man. And when he came into Newcastle United, I was just on my way out. But I got to know Charlie reasonably well when he was younger. And he never forgot. If I saw Charlie anywhere, he always had a word and asked how it was and all the rest of it. So it was good to see Charlie playing in that team against NUFC. But it was a particularly good performance by a Newcastle side. The sad thing is there was only 19,500 people there to see it, which was a bit disappointing. But Pop Robson was almost unplayable. But thanks to Wyn Davis just kept knocking them down, and Pop Robson just kept popping them in, and it was that sort of game. So that's my first recollection of football anyway.
No, great stuff. George has started off getting headless, and Stu and Mitchell finish off getting legless. Over to Steve Wilkinson.
Right. Well, I've been to Ipswich twice. I think we talked the other week when we played Norwich that it's not an easy place to get to, and Ipswich is probably harder to get to than Norwich is. So both times that I've been to Ipswich were way back in the early 70s, and both coming from by train from different directions. On this particular occasion, which is August 75, it was the first game of the season, and I was actually down in London for a party, and with some friends I had down there, and they weren't Newcastle fans, so I went up to the match on my own. So I got the train from Liverpool Street Station. It was only about an hour. Got to the ground. Now that game was actually Gordon Lee's first match as Newcastle manager, and I suppose at that time Mac was still his mate. You know, we've heard Malcolm telling many stories about how him and got on with Gordon Lee as time went on. But in that game, Malcolm scored 2 in that game, and Tommy Craig got the other one. And it was a not an easy game to start the season with a 3-0 away game to Ipswich. Bobby Robson was the manager at the time. They finished third the season before in the league, pretty close to winning it because there was only a couple of points in it. The team, you go through the Ipswich team, and there's names you'll remember from that time. Laurie Civil in goal, George Burley, Mick Mills, Brian Talbot, John Walk, well-known player, Kevin Beattie, Brian Hamilton, Colin Viljoen, Dave Johnson, Trevor Wymer, Mick Lambert. You know, household names at that time in that team. Our team that day was starting to see a bit of Gordon Lee influence. He brought a couple of his players in goal, Mick Mahoney, Irvin Natris, Alan Kennedy, Jeff Nulty, who was going to be Gordon Lee's star man as time went on, as you might recall. Pat Howard, Terry Hibbett, Mickey Burns, Alex Bruce, no relation, not that Alex Bruce. Super Mac, Alan Gowland, who had been brought in, and Tommy Craig on the left side. So it was a good win to start the season, and it was only a week before that game that we talked about last week when Super Mac scored the great goal. So we got off to a great start that season. Memorable thing about that match for me is, I started in London and headed back to Liverpool Street Station. I took me time, and I guess there was others that had done the same journey, but getting away from the ground, there was no rush to get back. So it was probably getting on to 7 when I got back to Liverpool Street Station, and it was one of the first times I realised what it was like supporting Newcastle, because it was a pretty deserted station, and on the other platform, all I could hear was people singing "Away the Lads," you know, and thinking, here I am in London, nowhere near Newcastle, and there's a handful of people in this station who probably had been to the match, but it just echoed out at a station, nothing to do with where Newcastle were playing that day, and you're hearing people chanting "Away the Lads." So that was a good start that season, and I think as time went on, Gordon Lee took over, and while we had a reasonable finish, we know what happened as he started to get rid of players like Terry Hibbett. So that was my first game back in 1975.
Great stuff, Steve. Cheers, mate. And over to Stu and Mitch. Not sure who's going first here, lads, but I'll leave it to you.
I'll go first because it's youth before beauty, apparently. I was informed. So I'm going to have to, tip a hat to the great MP, Mr. Ian Merton, tell a dad joke first. Because for those, I'm glad with the retro show, because we're all of a certain age where international travel wasn't fashionable, and all the holidays were taken within the UK. I must have been roughly about 8 years old, and we had a family holiday in Hemsby, Pontins holiday, and my older brother had won a competition to have a goalkeeping session with Paul Cooper, who was the Ipswich goalkeeper at the time. Now, this is when players would interact with fans, etc. So anyway, my dad's a big Hearts fan. I was a Newcastle fan. At the time, my brother supported Liverpool. Now he supports Hearts, maybe Newcastle. And bit of a mixture. So he's went on this course here. We had to sit in the car and drive him to this course. He's had to sit outside and wait for him. When he's finished, he's come back out. Now, if I was maybe 8, he would have been 12. So he's out. It's probably the same age as Steve's nephew now, who's just having his birthday, young Cosmo. So he's probably at the same age where you get a bit cheap. And his brothers come back out. He's got his goalkeeper gloves on, and I think we're all old enough to remember when goalkeepers just wore green, like the green shirt, and wearing gloves wasn't normally common. But he had these with the prick sticks on, and his brothers come out. My dad sat in the car and says to him, "So did you learn anything?" He went, "Yes, I did. I learned Paul Cooper has the longest throw in the league." And he says, "Well, how is that?" He says, "Well, apparently he can throw the ball all the way to Brazil." Which was Alan Brazil, who played for Ipswich at the time. I just thought I'd give you an Ian Mertens joke. And,
oh my God! Was that really worth 5 minutes of the programme?
No, but because we've been drinking,
edited out of the final.
Stu's nobody told you it's even worse when you have to explain it.
Yes, it is. I might start putting my black coat on and start seeing. Can you start seeing your drinks off, lads?
I will see them off. Don't worry. Right there. The first game I was going to talk about was the promotion season with Chris Hughton, the 2010. This is the year I left Tenerife, and I drove back from Tenerife to Newcastle. Now, you think, how can that be done? But this was done via a ferry from Tenerife North to Cadiz in Spain. It should be a two-day drive. And it took me and my friend Robbie 12 days to get back via our friends in Portugal, where we decided to stay for a bit, and then our friends in Madrid, and then we stayed in Bordeaux because apparently the wine was nice, and then we drove all the way up to Calais, where our new friends at Calais Customs decided to keep us there for an extra night, and eventually we got back to Newcastle, where Newcastle beat Blackpool 4-1. I then went to the Lake District to work, and then 2 weeks later, Newcastle were playing Ipswich at home, and I had 2 tickets courtesy of a friend, and everyone I knew had tickets, so my mother went with me, and my mother's only been to 4 or 5 Newcastle games in her life, and they've never lost when she was beaten. So we need to get a season ticket for next year when it's open again. So we're sitting there. This is the game. It was 2-2. We won the league. The trophy was presented to us afterwards. But what I always remember from this game is I'm one of these really shy and polite people, and I've never ever swore in front of my mother, and that's a fact. I've never sworn in front of my mother. So we're at the match, and there's industrial language going on, and my mother's was swiveling. Excuse me, Scottish as well. Can you keep your language down? Can you? Oh, mother, they're at the match. They can swear if they want. And so all this was going on. She was reprimanding everyone in our section in the Gallagher about the language, until some guy then said he actually swore at my mother, but a bit personally. So I had to have a go at him, saying that's my mother, don't speak like that. He then my mother then decided to have a go at me for threatening this guy for having a go at her. And I thought, I can't even win. I can't win with this. So it finished 2s each. I think I wrote the scores down. Probably I didn't. But if you remember that season when we got promoted, it started off really troublesome because we'd been relegated and we'd just been twonked 6-1 off Leyton Orient, was it, I believe?
Yeah.
Mr. Luke Edwards' team had just been twonked 6-1 off them. And apparently that's it. We're going down again. We're dropping down again. And Chris Hughton, to his credit, galvanised that dressing room, picked out the leaders, empowered them. There was the Nolans, the Bartons, the Smiths, and we actually romped that league at the end of it. We had to fight, but it's the same as every game. You have to earn the right to win the game, and then you can show your class. And we did that. and we finished 2s each. I know Andy Carroll scored and Shona scored a pen later on, and we thought, well, that's it. The Mackensley notched one, and we thought, well, we've won again, but we ended up drawing 2s each, but it didn't matter. It was a bit of a carnival, apart from my mother wanted to kick off with people for swearing at a match thing. But the rest of it was all brilliant, and they got the trophy, and off we went. So I just thought I'd mention that game because it was when we mentioned Ipswich last week, it was the first game I thought of when I was there with my mother.
Brilliant, great story as always, Stu. Mitch?
The same season, but the like
not the same mother.
Not the same mother, obviously, no. Same season down at Ipswich, because obviously the big connection everybody wants to talk about with Newcastle United and Ipswich is Sir Bobby Robson.
Yeah.
And so for the game in September 2009, they renamed their North Stand the Sir Bobby Robson Stand. They already had the statue in place, but that game was for the opening of the stand and the naming of the stand. We went down. People have heard me talk about prior to the days of Twitter and other social media, there were football forums, and I was active on a one called Skunkers, which had a little bit of a reputation, shall we say. And one of the lads that was behind Skunkers actually lived just outside of Ipswich. And so a few of us decided to go down. We stayed with him and we went for the opening of that stand. On the way down, Les Mowbray, one of the best lads you could ever meet, decided he was going to be the driver that day. And he broke a record that evening. He hit every cat's eye between Newcastle and Peterborough without fail. It was fantastic. My back has never been the same again. And the only reason he didn't hit all the ones to Ipswich because of roadworks at Peterborough. But we got there, had a really good night there, and then the next day, the opening of the stand. People use the phrase "football family" these days, and it gets a bit overused. But that's one of those moments where it doesn't matter what colour you're wearing on your shirt. It was about Sir Bobby. But then that game, that evening, I think it was an evening kick-off. I think it was 5:30, and we destroyed them. Absolutely destroyed them. 4-0 by the end. Nolan hat-trick and Ryan Taylor. If I remember right, Carroll and Ranger up front, and I think they were pretty much unplayable as a duo. And that was why Nolan profited from their work. And then to cap it all off, Roy Keaton was their manager, and we all do love a song about canine onanism. Anyway, and so that's the first game. Fantastic weekend with good mates, and good crack, and good laugh, and a great result, and one of everybody's football heroes on it. And you can't get better than that, really. Roy Keane.
No, you can't. Yeah, Roy Keane was the manager, wasn't he?
I was that manager.
He was, yeah.
I believe he had a bit of a meltdown when we went 3-0. He had a bit of a meltdown as well on the touchline.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, it was good times. I've got to read Mark's story before I come to Steve. Great stories. A story of my dad's of Ipswich in the 70s when there was bother after the match and he got chased in his platform shoes and he hid in the cinema. He ended up watching The Good, the Bad and the Ugly 3 times.
Brilliant.
Funny enough, that film title reminds us of The Bottom Row the night. Steve's the Good. Go over to you, Steve.
All right, lads. Steve Wilkinson, you just reminded us about Alex Bruce. I think his career really stalled at Newcastle because he was cup-tied, if I remember rightly, in 1974, wasn't he? So we signed him, and he was cup-tied. I think we got him in the January of 74, but he'd already played in the third round, and so we never really saw him. And he just played the odd league game, but because we had the cup run, I think Harvey was very much trying to keep the team together. So when it came to the following season, he that things were going astray and awry, and new managers coming in. But it's a name that I'd forgotten about, to be perfectly honest. I just threw that in for you.
Ginger hair, wasn't he? Ginger hair.
That's right. Yeah, I got him from Preston. I think Bobby Charlton was the manager of Preston at the time. Yeah. Anyway, the first game I was going to talk about, fairly up to date, fairly recent. Well, recent as in 5 years ago, was the home game, October 2016, when we beat Ipswich 3-0. couple of interesting things about this game. First of all, it was that particular move where we scored in the first minute, where I think we had 20 or 30 passes, and Perez put up front. 1-0, lovely goal. That was when Shelby could actually hit a ball with speed across the pitch, diagonally into the corners, whatever, and he had one of those games. But what was interesting about, a couple of things interesting about that game. One, from scoring in the first minute, we then had to go to the 73rd, and it looked like we were going to throw it away. And eventually Perez scored on the 73rd, and then Richie scored 78th. But that was the first game where we got permission to actually officially be inside St James's Park for the We Are the Geordies film, where we could actually take our own film crew in. So Zara had spent a bit of time, I'd spent a bit of time, and we managed to convince the club that, what we were trying to do was a worthwhile cause, and it was going to be done professionally, and we wanted to do it properly, which I think anyone who's seen the film knows that it worked out quite well. But this kind of sums up Newcastle in a way, and it's not meant as a criticism as such, but the way that the messages can be deflected. The press, the head of the press at the time, who we'd been liaison with, said, "You know what? No problem. Access all areas. It's not a problem. Bring the crew. Everything will be fine." So Zara piped up with James, the director, and they had the cameras, and they had a cameraman and sound, etc. The three of them were doing their bit. They were told they could sit on the side of the pitch. Everything was fine. They could move around. And they got in there, and like I say, the press secretary was fine about it. And then she introduced them to the security, who went, whoa, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. Who are you? And then there was a conversation about the passes that you were wearing around your neck. There was where you could go with those passes, how they were the wrong passes. And it became a kind of bureaucratic nightmare with like an hour before kickoff. And eventually it got sorted out. So, and I was sitting with George at a match at the time, and we saw Zara and James and the cameraman, and they were wanting to film the particular group of lads in the corner, Scud and the rest of them, for that particular feature that they were doing in that game. And of course, with the score in first minute, it was like, this is brilliant. So at half time, George and I are sitting there, and we could see Zara and James in the corner, and everybody, they were told they could, that once you were sitting down, that was it, you were stuck. But at half time, you could move. There's all these sort of strange rules and regulations that are in place about photography and how you can move and where you can go. But they were still there when it come to kickoff, or just before kickoff. And I'm thinking, they're staying at the same end. And then all of a sudden, you just see Zara and James with all the kit and the cameraman pelting it up the touchline to get me, and I went for the second half, panicking, having to get all set up again. We're thinking, what the hell's going on? But you look at the team. I mean, Darlow in goal, Yedlin, Lascelles, and Clark in the middle, Dummett on the left. The midfield was Richie and Gouffran, the two wide men, and you had Colback and Shelby playing central midfield. Perez probably, in that role, because we've seen him play it so well, sitting just behind Gale up front, and it was a great performance in the end. Scoring after 1 minute got everybody up for the game, but like I said earlier, having to wait for the 73rd minute when, if I remember rightly, Ipswich had some really, really good chances that they just didn't put away. I think they hit the bar once. There was a couple of shots went wide, a couple of saves by Darlow. So it kind of, in that start of the season, when you're really wanting to get off to a good start, and you're thinking after 1 minute, this is going to be it. And I don't know about you guys, but it always gets jittery. We always say score too early, and it can come back and bite you on the backside. And I think during that game, that's really where we thought we were heading. But that was my first recollection. Actually, before we go any further, I think it flashed up before, but one of the problems with this Ipswich thing was we never played them until 1964. Yeah. So it became a massive, massive problem. And thanks whoever chose Ipswich, because there hasn't been that many really exciting.
Well, I've got some bad news. Nick. I have, because although Tom tried to get in early on the chat, a good pal of mine, Nick, and you'll remember Nick, Steve, because he donated that wonderful flight across Newcastle for the food bank, which was won a couple of weeks back. Well, he's going to launch his website very soon, so we'll be giving him a bit of publicity. That's his company there, NM Aviation. Well, he did inbox us earlier on and ask if we could do Luton Town next week. So. So there we go. That's next week's challenge, lads. Luton Town.
We're not talking about any Luton supporters anyway. That's all right.
Nick's a friend of mine. Nick is actually a friend of mine, but he was until about 30 seconds ago.
You're gonna need a full week to research on that, lads. I think we all are.
I know why he's picked Luton, because it was his dad's first game, and it was the first game his dad took to him, and it was the first game he took his boys. To that game against Luton. It was all against Luton. So he's just inflicted that misery on us.
So it's not his love of Luton Airport then, is it not?
No. There was a song about that. Old ones will appreciate it. Google it, young'uns. It's on YouTube, I think. Spider VPN, big shout out to them, our main sponsors for the last 3 months. Great to have them on board again, and they're looking forward to getting involved with us with events as well, which is great. Geordie Riffs, premium guitar lessons for beginners and children, guitar repairs and service and recording studio. Get them on the website, geordieriffs.co.uk, Instagram at Geordie Riffs, Facebook at Geordie Riffs Official. Also a big shout out to John at qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in the northeast, and also to John from Jab Signature, who makes all of our promotional material and flyers. First time visitor to the channel, please subscribe, hit the little Newcastle Legends emblem down in the bottom right hand corner, and that's it. Click subscribe and you're in. Hit like, that's the thumb up, and click the share button to share it to your social media, and join the chat. Always plenty crack in the chat. It was hilarious last night. We had a really good laugh, and always a regular crowd in there. And if you're interested in my t-shirts, get yourself to nufcmatters.com. Plenty of those available. Get yourself onto the website and you can buy them. There are going to be limited t-shirts available with that current design on. That they're running them down out of stock. Got some really good ones up there, but get yourself on. John from QTech has organised all of that, and don't forget he has organised the special cult t-shirt which he put on sale last night, due to the criticism we've had from various other parties calling us a cult. We thought we'd hold our hands up and say yeah, we are. So big shout out to John for knocking them up. Okay, back to George again for your second game, George.
The second game's the League Cup game in 2001, and it's one of those games where you just wonder why not more. It was 4-1 the final score, which is a decent score, but we were 4-0 at half time, and with a team with Shearer, Robert, Speed, Lee, Amiobi, Solano, etc. And you wonder why it didn't become 8 or 9 or 10. And it could have been because everything they did after half time, I think it was one of the matches where I've never seen the ball hit the woodwork so many times, or the goalkeeper suddenly make lots of saves where in the first half he couldn't, the ball was hot, he couldn't keep hold of it. And so we ended up 4-1 with Robert and Shearer scoring the goals between them. Darren Bent scored their goal, and it was quite a good goal. 32,500 at the game, but as I say, that's a match which stuck in my memory, not because of the final score. Well, yes, because of the final score, but why only 4-1? It should have been 6, 7, 8, or 9, even more. We just couldn't put the ball in the net the second half. And as I say, I think in all the games I've seen, I think that one sticks out as the one where I've never seen them hit the woodwork so many times in one half of 45 minutes of football. So that's the second game for me. Fairly short one, but an important one as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, good. So big shout out to the Ipswich fans, Mr. Ipswich Town and Tom Smith, both Ipswich fans tuned in tonight. Thanks for subscribing, mate. Much appreciated. Hope you enjoy some of the content we've got on here. And yeah, big shout out to everybody in the chat as well. Lots of memories coming in. And Sam the man, he's touching on one. I'm not sure whether Steve or the lads will be touching on it. I remember that game, mate. That's the one game that springs to mind about me with Ipswich. I was there. George Burley scored an own goal after 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Lobbed it over the top of his own keeper. And Newcastle went on to win 3-0, I think, that day, if I remember rightly. I haven't researched it, but yeah, it was a great day, that. Anyway, on to Steve Wilkinson.
Right. Well, I'm going to talk about a game that I wasn't at, but I wish I had. It was going back to 1968, and I wasn't a lot older than Steve's nephew Cosmo, so going to games away at that time wasn't something I did, and probably was very difficult to do that. But it's actually a result that has created a bit of history, because I've been through every fixture, just scanning through the fixture since, and I don't think we've ever achieved this feat since then. George might be able to tell us that it happened in his time before that, but we actually played 2 successive away games within a week and scored 4 on both occasions. And it goes back to October 1968, and on the Tuesday that week we played Nottingham Forest away and won 4-2. And I think from what I remember, reading the papers and whatever news you could get in those days, it was a bit sparse. We actually stayed down in the south. We didn't travel back, and went on to play Ipswich on the Saturday and beat Ipswich 4-1. And it's the only time we've scored 4 in successive games away in that time. But other things that were significant about that game, or there was 2 games in fact, it was when we're talking about at the moment about bringing young players in, Elliot Anderson being a prime example. 2 players played in those 2 games and scored in both games. Keith Dyson and Alan Foggan, who were playing, and both of them 18 years old. They come through we've got them in from the junior sides. Keith Dyson, it was his 4th game for him and his 2nd goal, because he scored in the Forest game and the Ipswich game. And Alan Foggan was actually, he'd only played 2 games. He played a game at the end of the previous season, but that was only his 2nd game. And Alan Foggan obviously went on to score in the Fairs Cup final, which was later that year. And Keith Dyson had been, again was developing, but he didn't quite make it. And I think we ultimately sold him to Blackpool as part of the deal that brought Tony Green in. You know how valuable a transfer that was. But Keith Dyson did score some important goals. And when we ever do a European one, I think one of the games I will remember is the Anderlecht game in 1970. But that particular time, the team that day against Ipswich was, familiar names that many of them played in the Fairs Cup. Willie McFall in goal, Craig and Clark at the fullback, Tommy Gibb, John McNamee, Ollie Burton, Keith Dyson, Bobby Robson, Wyn Davies, Bob Monker playing more in an advanced role, which is how he got into playing and scoring in the Fairs Cup final, and Alan Foggan on the left side. Interesting manager for Ipswich that time, Bill McGarry, who ultimately came on and messed us up in the late 70s, early 80s. So that was a game that I wish I had been, but I say it was great to win 4-1 away after a 4-2 away earlier in the week. So that was my second story.
Good stuff, Steve. Good research as always, mate. Over to the 2 Ronnies, Mitch and Stu.
Well, I was going to talk about it again, but Steve Hasty talking about it, so there's no point anymore. No, but he's only upset because this was a game that involves Mitch. It was the last promotion season. The first one was promotion with Chris Hewton. This is a promotion with Rafa, and it was the 3-0 game. Now, I was meant to meet Dr. Neil, who was in charge of his own dental practice, for this game. Now, at the time, it's 3-hour time difference. Yeah, it was, yeah. Yeah, it was. 3-hour time difference. Don't worry about that. I'll meet you in the bar. So, obviously, you don't go to the bar for, let's say it's a 3 o'clock kickoff. You don't go to the bar for 3 o'clock. You have to get there early and get yourself fueled up for what's coming. And well, anyway, Dr. Neil couldn't get out on time. And he got in after about 5 minutes. He says, "What's the score?" And I says, "It's 1-0. Who scored?" I says, "Perez." And he says, "Was it a good goal?" I went, "It's probably the best Newcastle team goal you'll ever see in your life." And because his dad's on the top row, I can't really give you his full reply. But he disputed my words. And I says, "No, seriously, you'll have to wait till half-time till the show it again." Now, bear in mind, we're in the Championship at the time, so we're not getting like beIN Sports to show every Premier League game. So it was very rare Newcastle were like showed live. Comes to half-time, and again, with respect with George being on the top row, Neil's reply was, "My goodness gracious, Stuart, you were so right about that fantastic move that involved every single Newcastle player. And they scored the goal without an Ipswich player straight from the kickoff." And I said, "Well, I didn't tell you, mate." But just joking aside, imagine that had been like Liverpool last season or Man City this season or Brazil 70. You'd just be washed with it. And it was an amazing thing that happened. And I think it's a massive understatement, or it's underplayed or under-talked about. The fact that every single player touched the ball before the opposition player touched the ball and scored. And scored twice. We were and we won 3-0. And again, we gained promotion. We know with the last day of the season and all the drama that happened on that day. But for that game, I'll always remember that Mitch wasn't able to get there when he arranged to be. He arranged to be there. He missed it by about 4 minutes, and it was just one of those goals where you start thinking, right. He's touched it, and I think the commentator, it took them about 15 minutes to say that every player had touched the ball. And at this stage, Mitch started believing this, but he still, even when the commentator said, because obviously I speak to the commentators on a regular basis, he had to wait till half time to see it with his own eyes before he believed exactly how I explained it. So that was the second game I wanted to talk about, and that was just my perspective for a game that Steve Hasty stole. Because I put that on the group last week.
The great game robbery. Okay, Mitch.
I'm gonna call you on that one.
Oh, I tell you what, it's all about putting screenshots out.
When the dentist look really white.
Come on, then, Mitch.
I'll tell you the main reason I doubted him was with a lad called Dave Cartman who used to be here in Dubai. And this is the man who asked one day, "You know, man, him, the lad in the Bible who turned water into wine."
No, who they wrote the stories about. What, Jesus, is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, anyway.
I've got intelligent friends, you know.
My next game's February 95. And what got me thinking about this was actually something about terrace culture and how we all are in football, particularly with connections to big sportswear manufacturers like Adidas, Puma, Nike. You know, at the time we were wearing an iconic kit from Adidas. And for me, the first iconic kit from Adidas was Ipswich Town. That blue kit, pure blue, with the biggest trefoil I've ever seen put on a kit, ever. And that was one of those kits you wanted to own. As somebody who was, a teenager growing up in terrace culture, you wanted to wear something that had Adidas on it, and you wanted to wear it loud. And that Ipswich Town kit was the same. And then we were probably the one that followed on. But what people don't realise about Adidas kits is that, the really iconic kit that both Holland and the Soviet Union wore in Euro 88, that was actually called the Ipswich. There was a blue version of that was designed for Ipswich. But they ended up not wearing it because they had a big falling out with Adidas. And Admiral ended up making their centenary kit. That should have been Ipswich's centenary kit in blue. And it never was. But if you go back to the Adidas catalogues, it's called the Ipswich. And that's another connection between us and Ipswich that I see is this sort of connection with terrace culture, which for me, Ipswich is a strange place for that to happen. You know, Merseyside, maybe Manchester, Newcastle, London, Ipswich. You know,
can I just ask on behalf of the panel and everyone watching, where do you get these stories from? A football strip?
Yeah.
Okay.
I should collect them, man. Anyway, so February 95, Ipswich Town 0, Newcastle 2.
It's probably still
three things I remember about that game.
Sorry, George.
3 things I remember about that game. 1, it was bloody cold. It was almost the coldest I've ever been at a game, bar a game against Wimbledon in the Cup when the windows got put out the court. That's another matter. Second, the other thing I remember about that game was Barry Venison. I think that was Barry Venison's first game as centre mid, when he'd been moved from centre back, right back, and then he played centre mid, which is where he got his England cap. Everybody, you know, people talk about Barry Venison and did he get an England cap? Yeah, he did, but not as a defender. He played as centre mid. And the other one I remember was Paul Kitson. That was, for me, was the one that Paul Kitson proved that he was worth a place in the team. I think he set up the opening goal for Ruel Fox, and then got the second himself. Apart from being so bloody cold at that game, that's the other things I remember about it. And again, it was Ipswich is a strange place to get to. It's a longer drive than everybody thinks. You go down the country, but then you got to go out a long way as well. It's absolutely quicker getting to London, you know. But was worth the trip that day, and worth the celebration, and worth the journey home. And worth all of the hot soup I could get my hands on at the services on the way home as well.
Brilliant stuff, great stuff. Always good stories from you two, especially when you're on the Jaegers. Steve, over to you.
It's cool.
That Ruel Fox goal brings a little bit of not so much terrace culture as football culture, or it reminds me, because it was an absolutely fantastic 25-yard shot. But it came from the problem that has existed in football for years and years, and that's a fullback who cannot take a free kick or get a crossing and beat his first man. And if you remember rightly, John Beresford took a free kick, slipped, it hit the first man, and it went out the Ruel Fox, and he hammered it in from 25 yards. So in that situation, well done, Bez. It was an excellent move, I'll give you that. But in reality, it was an absolutely shocking free kick. Right, Stewie. While you're pouring, I'll just have a read of this little text message that you sent. When you said you were going to do the 2 games, you were going to do the 2-2 Houghton game.
This better not be entrapped.
No, you're going to do the 2-2 Houghton game promotion, and you were going to do the 3-1. Not the 3-0, the 3-1. But you said it was at home, and because we got beat 3-1 in the away game, I thought that was the game you're going to talk about. So I was going to follow on from that, and so that's where I'm going.
You know, what it is because I was back 3-1. You got excited with the fact that we won 3-1. You found one in the history. You're
back 3-1, but you never say who you're backing. I just think you put 3-1 down at any win.
Unfortunately, so was Newcastle.
But I've picked the follow-on, the 3-1, where we got beat 3-1. The reason I picked that one is, again, because of the We Are the Geordies film. That was one where Zara and the team got permission from the away club to actually go and film inside the ground, which was very good of them. It happened a couple of times. It didn't happen every time. There was a few games that went to where they got knocked back. But on this particular one, if you remember, the game itself, we lost the game 3-1. Freddie Shears scored. Then I think that we equalised with Murphy, and then we ended up getting beat 3-1. But we'd only won 2 out of 8, and it was getting jittery at that particular point. And obviously, everything that revolved around the film, the idea was that we're going to get promoted, we're going to win the league, all of that, the fairy tale story. And at this particular point, having won only 2 in 8, it started to get a little bit jittery. And I remember Zara was worried that, we weren't going to get the fairy tale end and we were going to have a disaster. We were going to turn into something that wasn't going to be what we all wanted to watch. So it was a bit panicky. And yes, we ended up, we were still, Brighton were way ahead. So I think everybody thought that Brighton had won the league. And all we were doing was we were hanging on for second place. And we're still probably 6 or 7 points clear of third place, which was Reading at the time. But Zora contacted her after the game, and she was already at Peterborough. And it was like, what you done? How did you get to Peterborough so quick? And she goes, it looked like I wasn't going to get what I wanted, so I left early. We just scattered. And what they actually missed was the third goal going in. So we missed that. At least she got Murphy's goal. She got the film that she wanted. She got the interviews because let's face it, the whole idea of the film wasn't so much it was what was happening around the game and around the fixture. It was, the journeys that people were making, the sacrifices that people were making, the passion that people had for the football, which was the whole gist of the story. But the crew left early, and she rang us and said that it was now getting panicky. That's where things were heading. And I don't know about you, because it was Easter Monday as well, and I got that feeling at that particular time, and I think Rafa, from his comments afterwards, were also, we didn't play well. We'd had a good result against Leeds, but, the fact that we'd only won 2 out of 8 games, which, when you look at it now, what, 2 out of 22 or something, but it was 2 out of 8, and Rafa was angry, and he wasn't happy, and he was really, having a go at the players, and they've got to pull themselves up. We've got this plan, and they've got to really, we're going to fight for this, etc., etc. Totally different to what we're getting at the moment. But that's just 2 different managerial styles, 2 different ways, probably 2 different leagues, 2 different eras, if you want to look at it that way. But again, it's just one of those things, isn't it? It's that difference that you have. It's that passion. The passion was still there among the fans, still travelling, still getting to where they wanted to be. And we went into the rest of the season and we ended up getting the result we wanted. But the very fact that we were in that situation and we thought we weren't gonna make it, and it was real jittery bum time. Because I think if we hadn't have got promoted, that it would have been, it would have been a financially disastrous time for the football club. And I mean, okay, things haven't gone to plan since then, and Rafa leaving. But I think if Rafa had failed at that particular point, I think we wouldn't have been as excited as we were. We wouldn't have had the passion that we still have. I think things would have really, really hit the rails at the football club more than they are at the moment. So that was my 3rd game. Ipswich got beat 3-1, but we managed to salvage it in the end in terms of the league and that glorious ending to the season.
Brilliant stuff. Michael Finch, good evening. Another Ipswich fan. He says, I'm an Ipswich fan, but obviously due to the Bobby Robson connection, I've got a soft spot for you lot. So happy today as we've been bought by an American consortium. Hopefully we're on our way back. Yeah, congratulations, mate. Yeah. It's nice to see somebody can get a takeover done. Keep praying for ours, for God's sake.
How many years have they been waiting?
Yeah, I saw somebody post something on Twitter today, lads. It was that woman off the Titanic film going 84 years and waiting. I mean, it could well be.
Ipswich have been waiting a fortnight.
All right, we're going to cram a lot into these final 6 minutes, lads. I think we might end up in extra time, but as always, I'm going to come up with a few photographs of famous faces. First of all, celebrity fans. Wasn't that many, and I think you'll get them all. So we'll start with this guy.
Nigel Havers.
Nigel Havers often plays the cad in various TV shows. Correct.
Griff Rhys-Jones.
Griff Rhys-Jones, of course. One half of Mel Smith and Jones. Yeah, Smith and Jones. Great show. And they used to be on Not the 9 o'clock News, for those of you of a certain vintage. That was a great programme back in the day. Yeah. Started off with Rowan Atkinson and Pamela Stevenson.
Keith Della,
the darts player, of course.
Will Farrell.
Will Farrell.
There's only one thing wrong about that one, Steve. I seen a picture of him on a Chelsea strip the other day.
That's right.
Something else. Claiming to be a Chelsea fan.
This is the problem with these celebrity fans, you see. They just do it when they visit somewhere and, they stick the shirt on. And like we've said it before with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Rocky, Sylvester Stallone. But listen, they're down there on these websites as fans.
I think he happened to be in London for something and
probably
hauled into Stamford Bridge to wear his strip, I think.
Probably, yeah, you're probably right. Okay, this is the last one.
Ed Sheeran.
Oh, I knew you'd get. I knew he'd get it.
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran. What a great picture. We often show a pic.
We got that, to be fair.
We often show. He probably did his teeth when he was a kid. We've got always like to show a photo of the ground. There we go, Portman Road. I've been to that one as well. There's not many grounds I haven't been to be perfectly honest. But yeah, there it is. And just for the Ipswich fans as well, we do have our own Bobby Robson statue. You've got yours, but there's some Ipswich Town fans outside the one at St James's. I've got to say, I much prefer the one at Ipswich's ground compared to ours. Only just mine, but look. They're both testament to a fantastic guy who did a lot for both clubs and, always remembered fondly amongst both sets of supporters.
Didn't a lot of their players act as extras in Escape for the Victory?
Yes.
The film.
Yes.
I think Goalkeeper actually stepped in for Sylvester Stallone in goal, actually. I think he was...
The keeper's the one who had his arm broken against Sylvester Stallone in,
Yeah. That's right, and I think obviously there was John Walker. I remember seeing him. He was definitely in one of the characters. But I think there was quite a lot of the Ipswich players made it. I think why. I don't know what the connection was.
And the two Dutch lads as well.
Do you know why that is? There was Tyson and Muren, Arnold Tyson and Frank Muren.
Yeah,
they'd been with one of the players, one of the actors, and they got invited just to be extras and. The rest is history, as I say.
I think Kevin Beattie,
they were doing this.
Didn't he? Kevin Beattie covered for Michael Caine and some of the action shots.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, Steve. I'm only 30.
You said 47 for the benefit of the tape earlier on. All right, okay, here we go.
Can I give a chance for another Geordie connection? It's never been mentioned tonight, and I'm surprised. John Edward Thompson Milburn.
Well, hold on. You're jumping the gun a bit, George. You're jumping the gun a bit because we haven't gone past the players or managers that were at both teams yet. So there we go. Right. So we'll start because you've let the cat out of the bag with Jackie
Milburn.
So of course, he was a manager, wasn't he?
Well, yes. He gets a lot of credit for setting up their scouting system, their youth system. And their new training facilities. Somebody else picked it up, yes, but he gets a lot of credit for starting it off.
Okay, good stuff. Easy these ones today, but here's another man who we've mentioned already.
Bobby.
So Bobby, of course.
Goddard.
Sarge.
Goddard, yeah.
One of my favourite players at Newcastle as an early supporter.
Too.
Andros
Townsend.
Andros Townsend, yeah. Another Ipswich legend from the northeast.
That's Alan Armstrong.
Alan Armstrong.
Got a fantastic football academy up here. Good lad. Alan, be nice to get him on the show at some point.
I think we sat with
him. I was at Newcastle Boys with him, Steve. And
I
can't believe and I can't believe he's 47 when I'm 30. So,
Titus Bramble.
Titus Bramble.
He said no.
Kieran Dyer.
Kieran.
Yeah.
That's Murphy.
Carol Murphy.
Michael Chopra.
See?
Dabizas.
Cookie.
Cucci.
Oh, Cucci, yes, sorry.
Cucci.
Charlie Woods.
Mentioned earlier by George.
Well done, George.
Darren Ambrose.
Ambrose, yeah.
I will get them quicker.
Ken Keeley.
Yeah.
Keeley.
Jack Colback.
Fullback.
That's it. Clean sweep for the lads. Not much to trick them this week. Well done, lads. Congratulations. Okay, it's time to pick your teams.
Steve, sorry. Can I just mention, every week I complain I don't get to see the captions beforehand.
Uh-huh.
I have a witness.
That's true. They were late on all the night for his phone.
I think it's just obviously a slight delay. Obviously a slight delay between you and getting them, but never mind. We'll go to you guys first.
I pay my bill. I pay my bill, so how does he get them quicker?
Over to you then. Over to you. You can have your first. You can have the first pop at the teams, lads.
Go on, right.
So goalkeeper is Michael Burns, not Mickey Burns. It's the other Michael Burns. Couldn't find another keeper at all.
No.
My back four is Danny Simpson, Titus Bramble, Glenn Keeley, and Colback at left back. I've gone for a midfield three of Dyer, Boyer, and Ambrose, which could be interesting. And then up front, I've gone with Paul Goddard, Alex Mackey, and Jackie Milburn. I know he didn't play for Ipswich, but he managed him, and I wanted to get him in. And obviously, there's only one manager that can go with both teams, and that's Sir Bobby.
Okay, good stuff. Are you going one, Stu, as well?
Yeah, I'll do mine. I picked the team because I thought there was loads of choices, and then I got to the goalkeeper, and I really had never heard of it. So I asked Mitch, and the statue of historian gave me that Michael Burns. So I've got him in goal. I have a back three because my favourite formation is 3-4-3 of Danny Simpson, Stephen Taylor, and Titus Bramble. That's not my favourite back three, but it was like the formation. A midfield four of Townsend. I've dropped Boyer for a reason I'll explain later. Townsend, Dyer, and Ambrose. So I have a front three. So I went.
That's a three.
Sorry, Townsend, Boyer, Dyer, and Ambrose. So I have a front three of Matthew, Goddard, and Jackie Milburn. You have to have Jackie Milburn in this one, to be fair. So that's where I am now. And anyone who supports Newcastle or Ipswich, it's really good to see Ipswich fans watching this today and appreciate the fact that they're viewing. And hopefully we'll see them in 2 seasons when they're coming up rather than us meeting them halfway or going that way. And it'd be good to see them again in a couple of years' time. And that was my team. There was a few subs with Murphy and Coochie and everything else, but that was my team.
Yeah, okay. Steve Hasty?
I stuck Burns because he was the only keeper I could have. I went with the back three of Simpson, Taylor, and Bramble. I put Dyer, Ambrose, Colback, and Townsend in the midfield, and I had a front three, stroke 1-2, with Goddard, Alex Mathie, and Murphy.
Great stuff, Steve. Okay, George?
Same thing with the goalkeeper. There just wasn't anybody else. He has an old-fashioned setup. 2 with Danny Simpson, 3 Glenn Keeley, 4 Jack Colback, 5 Titus Bramble, 6 Lee Bowyer, 7 Bell, 8 Ambrose, 9 Goddard, 10 Charlie Woods, and 11 Andros Townsend. Manager Bobby Robson, assistant manager Jackie Milburn.
Fantastic. Great to see Ward Jackie featuring. And Steve Wilkinson, last but by no means least, over to you, pal.
Yes, Michael Burns in goal. Took a lot of finding that. The back, Danny Simpson, Stephen Taylor, Titus Bramble. I put Jack Colback on the left fullback. I think he played there a couple of times. Midfield, I thought just for the fight, Kieran Dyer and Lee Boyer. Wide, Andros Townsend, and I put Ryan Fraser in. EP was there for a while. And up front, I've got Paul Goddard and Leon Best. I don't think he's been mentioned with anybody else. And Bobby Robson, manager.
Fantastic. Great stuff, lads. We went well into extra time, which is fine for the viewers. They've all enjoyed it. Great to see so many people watching tonight. They're probably the highest watched one of the lot. Luton Town next week, of course. So same time, same place, Wednesday night, 6 o'clock. Join me, George, Steve Wilkinson, Stu, Mitch and Steve Hasty for that one. I'm back tomorrow night, 6 o'clock till 7 with Supermac and Gibbo, looking ahead to the weekend's fixture. And then the three amigos will be back on Friday night. Stu, Mitch, good luck on your mission tonight, lads. Enjoy yourselves. Stay safe. Don't do anything George wouldn't do.
George had him. Do you know how many Thai massage parlours there are here in Dubai? No,
Christ, that'll be made into a meme and circulating on Twitter in the next 10 minutes, I'm sure. Take care, lads. Good night.
Keep off the balcony.
Good night, everybody. Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn your life.